When we return to our planet, the High Court may well sentence you to torture.
He likes movies, we like movies. Septum Sin versus the world. Septum Sin versus the world. Septum Sin versus the world. Septum Sin versus the world.
I'd buy that for $1.
Greetings! You're watching Septum Sin vs. the World. I'm Septum Sin. I'm here with Kotobuki Jake.
Hi.
And we're here to show you another list.
Yes.
I will give it away to you.
All right. So, all of our longtime and faithful viewers will remember that I think it was last summer or fall?
November.
Last November, in deference to, in honor of, the big Criterion sale that we love so much, that happens twice yearly, we did a really big list of the films that require a Criterion release.
2 hours.
I wasn't going to hit that part yet. I was going to say, it's a really good video, you ought to watch, but you ought to watch it in installments. Be aware that we did not restrict the size of the collections. We got a little carried away with a couple of them. And I helped. And we probably, be aware that we probably spent 45 minutes on the Woody Allen collection alone. So, but if you watch it in 3 parts,
Yeah.
you should be able to get it done. But this is a follow-up. This is going to be a little simpler, a little more straightforward, much shorter collections. We set a limit of 4 movies per set this time. So nothing massive. The Ghibli collection was also pretty massive. And we are going to, basically, because July is also Criterion half-off sale, we don't know with Barnes & Noble's new owners if we will continue to see this phenomenon twice a year at Barnes & Noble, but we will probably continue to see it online and through Criterion's collection.
Criterion itself does 50% off sales.
But I hope they continue with the Barnes & Noble because it's so much fun.
Oh yeah, there's something
Yes.
about going to a store
Yes.
and physically just leafing through
Yes.
the releases. It's just
But it's also
cool.
dangerous because I went there this time specifically looking for 2 titles they did not have and left with 2 others. That's how it goes.
There's always something that you need in your
There's
collection.
always
Criterion-wise.
something. And we will be presenting them in the upcoming weeks. But at any rate, also before we really kick off, as a callback to November, one of the films I put forward was 1984. The filmed edition of the famed book by George Orwell. It's a very, very, very dark and disturbing film based on a very, very dark and disturbing book. It featured John Hurt in a very excellent performance. And guess what? It's coming out on July 23rd, which means I might be able to get it on this sale, and you might be able to too if you'd like to. So they listen to us on at least one of them. So if they do that every time we do this, then
I will be highly surprised if they do this on this particular one.
Well,
one little set in particular, I can tell you.
Yeah, and actually, one thing that we did set a specific... We didn't really say a rule, but we did last time, and I forgot to mention this time, and I can see that he did not
I have
ignore
my
it,
reason for
Yes.
changing things this time.
is that... And I, once again, did not do this, but I may change it up in November. We have avoided doing things in the past. We avoided last time doing anything controlled by the mouse. Because Criterion's MO is we want to keep things in print to keep them available to collectors and the movie-going public. And Disney doesn't like that. Disney wants to yank it away from you after it's been on the market for a few months and then put it back out with big fanfare 5 years down the road.
Now, Disney, the reason why I've decided to do that is that
Right.
there's a little bit of a difference with how Disney is doing business these days.
There is.
As we move to the digital age, Disney's practice no longer makes sense for them. Matter of fact, I haven't heard even about the Vault in a long time now. Months
hearing
anyway.
about it a little bit, but it's not as big a thing. So.
It's more now. Those movies are always available on digital, and they're not as quick to do the releases. So we're looking at the potential for...
They are trying to snap up all their stuff for their own service.
Yes.
So they're still kind of keeping a vice grip on it.
But I could see them
Right.
doing a preservation of certain films at this point,
Right.
if they can get... If they can lever a bit of money out of it.
Right.
So if they've got something that comes to Criterion, it might be something that they get a portion out of. I think if they get a check, it might be there.
Right.
Again, most of their stuff has almost Criterion level release, though.
And Disney is one of the few American-based companies. Criterion is one of the other, where if they say it's a Blu-ray release, I don't go, I wonder if it'll be any good. I'm automatically like, it's probably going to look great. Disney, I give them props for cleaning up their visuals and making things worth getting on the upgraded medium. Now, the other thing, which again, when we do the next one, I may open things up a little bit, is the previous one we did include a lot of anime, and the thought had occurred to us in the intervening time that a lot of Japanese publishers can be just as restrictive as Disney.
Yeah.
And yeah, it would be just as hard for Criterion to keep them in print.
Aniplex.
The one anime they released, Akira, apparently only got a Laserdisc release, and they probably lost the rights to it after that.
Hey.
But with the Hollywood remake of Akira on the horizon and an announced series, it's possible that it will be easier for them to negotiate getting that one back. But yeah.
Speaking of the Criterion concept of keeping it in print,
Right.
if it's on the list, it needs to be. It can be something that Criterion has done before, because we have addressed it before with the Woody Allen collection.
Right.
If it is out of print on Criterion,
Which there are not many, but there are some.
and I mean, and a lot of those that went to Laserdisc Criterion are not in print.
Right.
There were actually a couple Woody Allen films that are Criterion, but Laserdisc Criterion.
There were more than just Annie Hall?
There were.
I thought it was just
two.
Annie Hall. Was it Manhattan one?
Yeah,
of
I
them?
think Manhattan got a release on there, because I remember seeing it when I was looking for pictures. But again,
So,
I'm not here to count those, because you can't get the. Well, you could, but you'd need a Laserdisc player, and you'd have to pay a lot.
the other basic rules that we have in line, rules and guidelines, nothing within the last 5 years, which for our intents and purposes basically means summer of 2014. If it was earlier than that, we can have it. I love when Criterion snaps up awesome titles and puts them out, especially if they do a really good job of it. But I'm a firm believer that to really give us the Criterion experience, a film has to have some time in the public conscious. You have to have time to see what the awards history is. You have to have time for some documentaries possibly to surface. You have to have time to talk about the impact that it's had on other filmmakers. And a 5-year window is the minimum, we think. Other than that, theatrical feature films, they don't really seem to do much with anything else.
So now,
Yeah.
I don't have a particular order that mine are in. Those are just kind of thrown out. So I don't know if you had like a particular order that you felt like best to least. Or
I have an
there's just,
order,
like,
but
these are
I'm not.
10.
I have an order, but I'm not beholden to it. Yeah.
Well then.
There's just so many to choose from, which is why we're going to do this one periodically. So, is that enough intro?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Why don't you go ahead and start us off?
Okay, so I'm going to start us off with a film that I love. A film that a lot of the critics loved and a lot of audiences loved, but it didn't really make an enormous splash on its release. and it really got overlooked at the awards and everything. And that was Jason Reitman's directorial debut, a little film called Thank You for Smoking, which is a film that features Aaron Eckhart as a tobacco lobbyist. A film that centers on a tobacco lobbyist, you would probably not think that it's a great film, that you would enjoy, or that you would root for the protagonist, or that it would be one of the most fun movies you'd ever seen. But you do kind of do that. So I'm looking here at the back. We've got different characters and their character descriptions. So we have Aaron Eckhart as the Sultan of Spin. We've got David Koechner, and I can't remember who she is. They are the Merchants of Death, the alcohol lobbyist and the gun lobbyist. You got William H. Macy as the Big Cheese from Vermont. You got Katie Holmes as the Vindictive Reporter. Rob Lowe as the Hollywood Super Agent. This guy is the caffeinated assistant, and Sam Elliott is the dying cowboy. Not to mention that since it's a Jason Reitman film, he's contractually obligated to have J.K. Simmons. It is a really fun film. It's really well done. It is one of Sam Elliott's best roles, and he should have gotten an Oscar nod for it. And Aaron Eckhart should have gotten an Oscar nod. It takes talent to play a sleazy tobacco piece of trash and have you rooting for him. And it's a hilarious film. And Reitman is a brilliant director. It's about time he gets his due. And he has multiple films that are Criterion level, Up in the Air, Juno. Tully's not old enough, but when it's old enough, I'll push for that one. But this one definitely should get Criterion.
You know, one thing you had said that did not mention that I should include is the soundtrack.
Oh, yeah.
It had an amazing soundtrack. It's one of the first films, other than Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, where I just had to go get the soundtrack.
Yeah.
It's a really good soundtrack. Had a lot of good songs on it, and a lot of cool, even instrumental pieces. Well worth a listen. You should definitely check that out. Speaking of films that you should check out, one film that I recommend to most people who are going through drug problems is on this list. And it is a film that not only is a very well done film, but a film that has won many awards, and oddly enough, at a time when the subject matter it covers, you would not think it could win those awards.
Yeah, this one was ahead of its time.
And this is The Lost Weekend. It surprises me when I looked it up and I found it was not on Criterion. It is such a good film.
Best Picture winner.
It is, and actually won 4 Academy Awards because it said so on here.
Oh, and I just realized a wonderful connection here. We got this stars Ray Milland, and this stars Sam Elliott. So, when will Frogs get its Criterion release?
This was Best Picture in 1945, and everybody smoked and drank in 1945. This is a film about an individual who is an alcoholic. And when they say The Lost Weekend, they literally mean that the weekend was lost in multiple ways. You get to see this guy struggle with alcoholism, with the withdrawals. One of the best depictions on film, in my opinion, of alcohol withdrawal. There have been others that have done well, but this is one, like Requiem for a Dream, for instance, has some terrible things with withdrawal and stuff, but I've been told by people who've watched this that this one kind of frightens them, whereas Requiem for a Dream, many of them actually use after watching it. It encourages their use, which is kind of odd. And I work with people in that thing, and they say that it gives them cravings to
Now,
use.
what do they tell you about candy? I thought that was one of the most harrowing withdrawal ones I've ever seen. Ugh.
But this one, like I said, it is, to me, well acted. Has an interesting soundtrack. And I know there have got to be a lot of good special features and good depth to
It's
this
William
film.
Wyler, isn't it? The director. Oh, Billy Wilder, I mean. Yeah, still important. Billy Wilder is a big name in Hollywood.
Because all here is production notes, and there aren't a lot of releases of this film.
No, they're not.
But if you have not seen this, this is a film to watch, and one that definitely needs a Criterion.
And I agree with you. I'm surprised there isn't one.
Yeah, I was surprised myself.
Now, another group where it's a little surprising at which ones have and have not gotten the Criterion release is Alfred Hitchcock films. He has had a lot. I have gone through the Rebecca release, and it's awesome. I mean, it's an incredible release. And there are releases. I just picked up one, which we'll talk about soon, but also The Lady Vanishes had one. There are several.
31 Steps.
31 Steps, which I need to get that, I think. But some of his are surprisingly not. Now, both of us have this really awesome, badass, velvety Alfred Hitchcock collection. You open it up. It's really, really cool. And I would not want to get rid of this collection for the world.
Oh, no.
But several of the films on it really should have Criterion releases. And correct me if I'm wrong, but The Man Who Knew Too Much, I think, has one.
Yes.
Do any of the others? I can't even remember Vertigo or
I don't think
Psycho.
I don't think any of the major ones
So
have.
there's a lot of them that could.
Yes.
But I decided, even though Psycho is right here, and I don't think it has a Criterion
They are
release,
slowly moving through his catalog, much
Yes.
like they are moving through Charlie Chaplin's
and
catalog.
Psycho does need one. And incidentally, tune into this week's Inside Movies Galore, where we discuss Psycho.
Yes.
But I decided to think outside the box. Even though Psycho is one of my favorites, Psycho and Rear Window are probably my favorite Hitchcock films. There are two of his that are a little less known that are my other favorites. Rope is one of them. Does that have Criterion release?
No.
But one that I know for certain does not. It's one that often is forgotten. And I love it. It's his funniest film, I think. And that is a film called The Trouble with Harry. The trouble with Harry is that he is dead.
Yeah.
Basically, it's about this guy is dead, and all these people are trying to figure out what to do. It's like the Hitchcock version of Weekend at Bernie's, you know? And I feel like it probably influenced Woody Allen, the Coen brothers, Tim Burton. A lot of people who have that
It was
kind of
so
darker,
dark humor.
It's
Yes.
big time gallows humor, but it's freaking hilarious. And I would love to see a left of mainstream Hitchcock film get the full Rebecca treatment.
I really wish
I would
that
love to.
Alfred Hitchcock Presents got
Yeah.
a full release. Because that one has DVD releases, but they're really out of print. That was a really neat show. Alfred Hitchcock, a good collection. Well, it's against our rules to do one that big again. But
Yeah.
a full collection with
Well, maybe
the...
when down the road we might make room for a big one here or
But,
there.
you know, that
yeah.
would be kind of cool. It's not like they haven't gone and taken a huge collection with films that they've already previously released before.
Yeah, I mean, even if they just basically got hold of this one, and wasn't the revamped collection this one plus North by Northwest?
Yeah, plus North by Northwest.
Yeah, something like that. A couple of these films are not as good. Torn Curtain, it's not that great a film. Frenzy wasn't my favorite, but it was interesting because it was more modern.
That was...
But I loved Shadow of a Doubt. I loved Family Plot was another. It was his last film. It was basically a spoof of his earlier films. But yeah, I definitely I would love to see Trouble with Harry get a proper release, like a real.
There were even two releases of The Man Who Wasn't There.
Right.
Well, you knew too much, sorry. Because
Right.
there's an old release,
Well,
too.
he remade a couple of the
Yeah.
stories, yeah.
I mean, this is the other one I have, which is a really crappy one.
But it has a lot of the old
But it
ones
has
on
the
it.
oldest stuff. Some of these actually, I think some of these did get, like the Lady Vanishes got
Right.
a Criterion release.
Yeah.
So,
Sabotage
and the
was
Lodger, I
pretty
think,
good.
got one
Yeah.
too. So, good films, though.
Mm-hmm.
I actually liked a lot of the films. It's hard to see it, though. The art,
Yeah.
there it is. The art is kind of cool on there. Mm-hmm. A lot of the ones he actually did in England, as opposed to that other box where a lot of them were released in
Right.
San Francisco.
Well, actually, pretty much all of those, almost all of those were American or during his American career. I think he went back home for Frenzy. It definitely had a more British
Yeah.
vibe to it. But, yeah.
So, this one kind of pushes the rules a little
Yeah.
bit. Especially one release in particular. When was the third one? The third one was after... Was what, 2016? No, 2015?
No.
14?
Actually, I think it was earlier than that. I think it was 2010. Because I'm
So-
almost sure it was the same year that Summer Wars came out.
Disney has acquired a studio called Pixar a long time ago.
A little one. No one's really heard of it.
Yeah. That did something called computer animation. Nobody ever heard of that. Mm-hmm. But one particular film broke the
2010.
mold and made a type of animation mainstream to the point where Disney's mainline films are all pulling from this company, and that is Toy Story. Mm-hmm. Now, this is my first collection. Like I say, it kind of pulls it because the last film, but because the last film kind of wraps the story, they might continue with it. You never know. But because the last film that came out for kind of wraps the story up, you could do a complete Toy Story collection. And I've got everything except for that film because it's in theaters now. So we got Toy Story, which was, of course, the introduction, and really most of our introduction to full-on computer animation for feature presentations. We'd seen it in some, like, TV. Like, I saw it in, what was that, Reboot, or some of those series. And it's about these toys that come to life. And one of these toys is the favorite of the main boy, and he is enjoying that, being the leader, and he's played by Tom Hanks. But then this new cool toy, played by Tim Allen, who's a spaceman, quickly becomes the child's favorite. And this causes problems. So again, a really fun adventure. It has a lot of depth to the story. And it had so much depth that it spawned a sequel, which was Toy Story 2, which also introduced new characters. And the idea of permanence. People get old, people give toys away. And they start to confront the plot line here, where they come up with, they get captured by an evil eBayer.
Pretty much.
So again, fun ones. The third one definitely confronts the same issue as the second one, but this time they do have to contend with being their child being too old for them. And they have to put up with it. To me, this one, though it won the Academy Award, it did a good job of restructuring it, but I feel like these two really is the same thing here. They all confront the
Summer
same...
Wars should have won that year.
They all confront the same thing, the same story. It's just a slight tweak on that story.
Yes.
And the fourth one also deals with that same concept of you're no longer the favorite. People age up. People age out. Life moves on. I don't know how many times they're going to have to try and move on with that life. Maybe when we get to Toy Story 50, they'll have done it.
Toy Story 5,000.
They also had a couple of like of TV features, which are kind of cool. Toy Story That Time Forgot, which was kind of fun. As a they were playing in this with these other types of Jungle Man toys. It's kind of destructive, actually. And this other one, the Toy Story of Terror, which is a Halloween special, also fun. I really had fun with these, and this one was at like a truck stop that they were in when they were on a trip, and they got there, and I really enjoy watching them. They're all fun. I would think that a collection would not just have these or these, but the shorts as well. And doesn't have to necessarily have the regular Pixar shorts, because you could just have all the Toy Story shorts, because there's 3 or 4 of those as well.
Yeah.
So it would be kind of a fun collection.
It'd be nice if it came with the shorts that were originally packaged with the movies.
And in 4K.
Yeah.
Good 4K restoration. They don't have 4Ks of it out now, but I do think this would be a good collection to have.
Especially the newer ones.
I would buy it if it was like this compact collection that's like maybe 2 of these deep. That'd be kind of cool.
Very cool. So, next up, we have one that I believe we mentioned earlier on in this video, or maybe it was a previous video and I'm losing track. I don't know. But we have a...
I mentioned it with my last...
a film that is not an easy watch. Not at all. Oh yes, we did just talk about this one. And this is the film Requiem for a Dream by Darren Aronofsky.
What, not Pie?
Not Pie. Well, you could do Pie if you wanted to do a multi-film collection, but I'm not doing that right now. Requiem for a Dream is actually one of, I think, 2 Aronofsky's films I've actually seen in theaters. I actually saw Black Swan in theaters. Both of those were harrowing experiences. Requiem for a Dream, at its simplest, it is a film about addiction.
Yeah.
It is all about addiction. You have a lot of different addictions. It basically centers on 4 people. You've got Ellen Burstyn, who is a lonely woman living by herself. Her son, Harry, who, unbeknownst to her, is a drug pusher. His very pretty girlfriend, Marion, and his best friend, Tyrone, who's also a drug pusher. And you've got Ellen Burstyn in an Oscar-nominated role, Jared Leto, Jennifer Connelly, and Marlon Wayans. Yes, that Marlon Wayans. This is why I give Aronofsky so much credit. He got Marlon Wayans to act.
Well, he's been capable of acting. He just
rarely
takes those trash roles.
Rarely. He's okay in just the right role, but it's so rare that he gets a good role. Even when he worked with the Coen brothers, he was abrasive and annoying. But in this one, he actually is very sympathetic, and you feel for the man. But basically, the 3 younger ones get into drugs. And basically Harry breaks the cardinal rule. Don't use if you're pushing. Yeah. It's not a good idea. But the 3 of them have their own issues. The girl actually gets into a very unfortunate lifestyle to finance her interest. And the mother, not to be outdone, is addicted to television and becomes addicted to diet pills because she gets this crazy obsession in her head that she's going to be on this game show somehow for some reason, and she wants to look good. She wants to, and she thinks she needs to diet and all this stuff, but she does the easy way out, which is the pills. And basically the film is a downward spiral as you watch all 4 of these people's lives go to hell. That's pretty much what the film is. And being an Aronofsky film, it's very artistic. It's very artfully done. He almost gets too hung up on the art, which is probably one of the reasons why it may be less effective for some people. And I personally, I was very much blown away by the film the first time I saw it. I understand the criticisms, and as time goes on, I can see how, some would. But I still think it is definitely worthy of a Criterion exploration. I would love to see some really in-depth discussions on using and substance abuse and that sort of thing. I would love to see some really in-depth discussions on the cinematography, the editing, all this stuff. Honestly, think this film should have been up for a boatload of artistic Oscars. It just had the one for Ellen Burstyn. Makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's worth a look, no doubt.
It is a good film. Yeah. Very well done.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we had the Woody Allen collection for my last one. So next, Woody Allen collection part 2. No, just kidding. But there is a Woody Allen film that I did not cover because he did not direct it. There are a couple that he's been in that he has not directed.
Mm-hmm.
So we're doing a collection. No, just kidding. Just one film, thank you. And that is Picking Up the Pieces.
Mm-hmm.
This is not only a film that I feel deserves the Criterion treatment, it deserves a revival. I mean, this is an out-of-print copy.
Yeah.
Picking Up the Pieces is a film about a man who murders his wife, Woody Allen. No, Woody Allen's not the wife, but
That's an ugly woman.
But he actually murders her, and of course, one of the pieces, her hand, still fresh and giving the finger to him as he dies, falls out and is picked up by a dog, I believe, and then brought to a small town.
Mm-hmm.
In this town, odd miracles happen when people pray to the hand. So they start putting the hand at the church, praising it as the hand of the Virgin Mary, when she is anything but a virgin.
Is it still flipping the bird when they do that?
Yes. Yes, it is. And Woody Allen, of course, discovers it and has to come back to try and get the piece.
Yeah.
Now, this has a wonderful cast. Has Cheech Marin, Kiefer Sutherland, David Schwimmer, Maria Grazia Cucinato. I can't remember what she was in, but I know she's been in several things.
Yeah.
So, a lot of fun things, and some of my favorite lines in films, in comedic films. Dark comedy. Woody Allen was a good lead for this film. So,
well, it was more of an ensemble film, if I'm remembering correctly.
And he had one of the best lines at the end. I just can't remember what it is at the end. I think it's like, God said, if you can't get my sense of humor, go fuck yourself, or something like that.
Oh. No wonder you can't remember what she was in. She was in Il Postino.
Well, as you can see, this one has a listing of things.
That's
Interviews,
not bad.
trivia game, theater trailer, biographies. This is back in the time when they were talking about motion images.
Yeah.
Things like, hey, it's got a DVD menu. That's a great special feature.
It's got electrolytes.
But to me, wonderful film. Glad I had it. I didn't even know it existed until I had like a Chinese Woody Allen collection that I eventually stopped because I don't like bootlegs. So this was a hard one. It took me a long time to track down all of them on legit releases, which I have all of his releases now on legit, except for, when New York and the Rain comes out.
Right. Well, like I said, we wanted to try and avoid any sort of wasting a lot of time on big collections, but I thought of a small one that I thought would be really, really good. And my title for this collection is Christopher Guest 3 Mockumentaries. For those of you who don't know, Christopher Guest is a brilliant mockumentarian. He actually played Nigel St. Hubbins. Am I getting the character right? Or was that was Michael McKean? Geez, I'm getting the characters mixed up. Derek Small.
We need to cover those.
Whatever.
On the
but anyway, so
show.
he was on This Is Spinal Tap, where he got a taste for mockumentaries. And over the course of about a decade, he put out 3 of them, and I thought they would make a wonderful Criterion collection. First off, you have Waiting for Guffman, and that's guessed right there as Corky, who's the Corky St. Clair, who is a big-time would-be actor and director who ends up in small-town America directing a small-town play. And this has one of my favorite taglines of any movie ever. There's a good reason some talent remains undiscovered. So this also features Louis Arquette, Bob Balaban, Matt Kiesler, Eugene Levy, Catherine O'Hara, Parker Posey, Fred Willard. Music and lyrics by Michael McKean, Harry Shearer, and Christopher Guest.
You'll be seeing these names again.
Yes, you will. And written and directed by Christopher Guest. Next up, we have Best in Show.
Extremely pricey, too.
About dog shows. And this, for my money, I have said before, and I don't think I'm going to change this anytime soon, I think this is the funniest American movie ever made. It's freaking hilarious. Once again, Christopher Guest plays, what's his face? I can't remember his name, but he's a dude from Pine Nut, North Carolina, who's got a little basset hound. And you've also got John Michael Higgins, Michael Hitchcock, Eugene Levy, Jane Lynch, Jennifer Coolidge, Michael McKean, Catherine O'Hara, Parker Posey, Fred Willard. You'll notice there's a lot of overlap in those cast members. Once again, it's written by Christopher Guest and Eugene Levy, directed by Christopher Guest. And then we have A Mighty Wind, which reunited Michael McKean, Christopher Guest, and Harry Shearer as a trio who call themselves the Folksmen. So your Spinal Tap has gone folk.
Yes.
And then you also have Parker Posey, John Michael Higgins, and Jane Lynch in a Glee-style choral ensemble. And Eugene Levy and Catherine O'Hara as Mitch and Mickey, who are sort of a stand-in for kind of like the Sonny and Cher kind of old-school duo kind of thing. And you've also got a number of other people in here. Once again, Bob Balaban, Jennifer Coolidge, Jim Pittick, Larry Miller, Don Lake, a whole bunch of people who are regulars. Once again, music and lyrics basically by Shearer, Guest, and McKean. And this was actually an Oscar nominee. Kiss at the End of the Rainbow was an Oscar-nominated song from the film. Personally, I think A Mighty Wind itself would have been a really good song for them to do. But all 3 of these are really basic gist to this is they're putting on a folk reunion concert, that sort of thing. So basically, all 3 of these are wonderfully hilarious movies. They're very great. I love mockumentaries, especially when they're done well. These are done well. And I think the 3 of them do work together enough thematically to make a really good set. And I would love to see Criterion do, just go all out. Do some interviews, do some... one thing that they could do with this one, I have the collector's edition of Spinal Tap, and they actually got Guest, McKean, and Shearer to do the audio commentary in character for Spinal Tap, including the title screen. I would love to see the 3 of them do the guest commentary on this.
Yeah, that would be entertaining.
Yes, in character. And, yes, it would be, or maybe guest character from this one doing the commentary. I think, well, then again, the sports commentators on this one, I think it was Jim Pittick and Fred Willard who did the audio commentary for the dog show. They should do the commentary for that one, definitely.
So which one was the guy who was like, what happened?
What happened?
That was Fred Willard, and that was from this one.
Yes.
That's one of our resources that you've seen. Willard plays a washed-up entertainer who is the manager for that choral group, and he has this wonderful little bit where he's talking about all his taglines from the show he did, and he's like, hey, when I say, what happened? And I can't do my work. And also, I think I was the first to say, I don't think so. And I love that he has a little comment. He's like, the show only lasted a year, which is great because that's how you establish a cult. But anyway, so good times.
So, we talked about the first one that we came up with, Thank You for Smoking,
Yes.
with a great soundtrack. So I've got another one that also has a great soundtrack. It is a
And that one
musical
does,
one,
too.
and it is Give My Regards to Broad Street, a Paul McCartney film.
Ah,
Also has Ringo appear in it. And essentially, I'll just read out the back here for you. Legendary Paul McCartney creates a rousing musical fantasy about a pop singer/composer who realizes that the master tapes of his about-to-be-released album are missing. To make matters worse, if he doesn't locate them by midnight, businessmen will take over his company. With captivating musical direction by Beatles director George Martin, McCarthy is joined by top rockers from Pink Floyd and Led Zeppelin, and fellow Beatles star Ringo Starr. Yeah.
Beatles star, Ringo Starr.
Among the spectacularly staged tunes are Beatles classics Yesterday, Eleanor Rigby, and Good Day Sunshine.
Nice.
So they have a lot of Beatles tunes. You also have No More Lonely Nights, which kind of debuted here. But also two that are pretty much, at least to my knowledge, exclusive to the film. Wanderlust, which was for a long time my favorite McCartney song. And Ballroom Dancing, which is actually also a fun song. And the scene for Ballroom Dancing is also really cool. It's very surreal. The art direction kind of goes between semi-modern takes, at least modern takes for the 80s, and old school Beatles craziness for some of the art direction. And they've had films like A Hard Day's Night released. Matter of fact, I know they have A Hard Day's Night released because I own it. This should not be far behind. It's pretty cheap to get it these days. The soundtrack is also not hard to get. Very good soundtrack. I
When
have
did this
the
come
soundtrack.
out?
Let's see here. I think it's 84.
Oh, okay.
So, well worth seeing. There's one that my father introduced me to a long time ago. There are a couple that had really good soundtracks, and we would go between this soundtrack here and the Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome soundtrack. Both, by the way, excellent soundtracks, and I do mean that with all seriousness. That's probably the best thing that Beyond Thunderdome had going for it, but well worth a listen.
I'd say Eleanor Rigby is one of my favorite Beatles songs.
I would love to hear just some commentaries, especially since Paul McCartney is still alive, and so is Ringo Starr.
Right.
So they could still do a commentary for this film, and it would just be kind of cool to have, or even an essay or something written by one of them.
Very cool.
Shoot, when did no, John Lennon died in 79, 70.
Was it that early?
I think so.
I
When
could
did
have sworn
John Lennon die?
it was in the 80s. But it definitely, if he was still alive in 84, it wasn't after 84. I know it was early 80s. I know
Let's
Harrison
see
was
here.
alive for many years
George
after
Harrison
that.
was alive until the early 2000s, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, he died in 1980.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
yeah, so he couldn't have made a commentary on the film or
No,
had
he
anything.
couldn't have. No.
This film probably wasn't even in the guy's mind at the time.
Right.
Well, maybe some of these films kick a long time.
Oh, yeah. So, speaking of one that probably took a while, we go from one that's kind of a deep cut to one that is, really, they haven't done a Criterion release yet.
Yes.
And actually, am I correct on this? I don't think they've done any Spielberg films.
They've got to have done at least one Spielberg film.
You would think, but I don't know that they have. So, we're going to hit some Steven Spielberg here. And probably the best film he has released so far, one of the most impressive films that I have ever seen, is his film, his student film. I still think it's hilarious he actually submitted this for college credit. Schindler's List. You talk about great soundtracks. This does have a phenomenal score, but it was one of the biggest examples of really, really screwing around with Oscar consideration, because this came out the same year as Jurassic Park, and Jurassic Park wasn't even nominated for soundtrack.
Well, there's one that
And
he
it was because they
produced.
wanted this one to win. But it did win quite a few Oscars, including Best Picture. This is a really phenomenal film. It really is. It is a classic in every sense of the word. The fact that Criterion has not tackled it baffles me. This is one they could easily do like a 3-disc multi-set thing, you know. And I would love to see that. 2-disc would be fine, but they could go 3. But this collection here, actually, even though this is a really cool set, it's a really cool looking set, and I think I own this same edition, there's almost no bonus features on it.
Yeah,
So,
well, that set
I'd
looks cool,
really-
but it's not very good.
I'd really love to see what they have here and more. So, Criterion, get on it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there has been a Criterion release of Close Encounters of the
Oh,
Third
okay.
Kind, but remember when we were talking about that rule about out of print?
Yeah.
It was released on...
Laserdisc.
Yes.
I'm surprised they put so much on Laserdisc. I missed Laserdisc altogether.
Apparently, we need somebody with a Laserdisc Criterion collection.
The only reason I even know what Laserdisc is some of the stuff we watched in middle school was on Laserdisc, you know?
They're huge, too.
They were huge.
So, we talked a little bit last time about the Jim Varney, well, not Jim Varney as much as the Ernest collection.
Well, yeah.
Where it was, we would, but then I think I ended up settling on Ernest Goes to Camp.
I believe so, yes.
But one that I didn't think about, which is very out of print, and unfortunately, the late great Jim Varney has a first appearance of Ernest in a feature film, which is Dr. Otto and the Riddle of the Gloom Beam. This actually debuted a lot of the characters that he did. And he was an excellent character actor. Mm-hmm. He did a lot of cool characters. He was in Toy Story for 2 of the movies.
Yeah.
Playing Slinky Dog.
Yeah. Unfortunate his passing took him out of the running for the later films. And is it Jim Cummings who took over? I can't remember.
They didn't have him talk that much after, though.
Yeah, when Slinky Dog talks, he does a serviceable impression, but
Yeah.
it's, yeah.
So, again, this is a comedy.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, the very first of Ernest. And it's kind of him and his twin, Dr. Otto, which, of course, you recognize this from the TV show, where he's got the hand on his head, the alien. I know you recognize the woman, the old woman that he plays.
Yeah.
And, of course, everybody recognizes Ernest. But this would be, one, an opportunity to get this thing back in print, which it really needs to be, and 2, get something with serviceable features. Let me read off. On this, by the way, very rare. I've seen it go for as much as $200. I did not pay that for it. Very rare DVD's features. Digitally mastered. Ooh. Interactive menus. And chapter selections. Remember when I was telling you about early DVD releases?
Yeah.
This was a very early release. I need to see it. That's the other problem, is I have not seen this.
I need to see
We
it.
talk about priorities. This one needs to be there. Maybe we could do like a movie night one week. We just not film for a week, and we just get together and we watch the Ernest thing.
It'll be even longer before we finish that.
Yes, true enough.
Okay, so my next one up, I debated including for the simple reason that this one has already had a ton of releases,
Yes.
including a ton of collector's edition releases, and he has a 40th anniversary edition that has a lot of bonus features, and I have a really nice collector's edition, but it's just, I said Best in Show is probably the funniest American film ever made. This is probably the funniest film ever made. Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
I still can't get my wife to watch it.
Oh, geez, I can't believe it. Now, Criterion has dabbled with Monty Python. They did release The Life of Brian, and it's out of print. So, they really need to really get their act together and really do some Monty Python.
Isn't that no, it wasn't a Gilliam director. It was directed
Well,
by...
it was co-directed by Terry Gilliam and Terry Jones.
See, Gilliam
Yeah.
is the N.
Yeah.
They love Gilliam.
They
at
love Terry
Criterion.
Gilliam,
They even
yes.
released They should release this above Jabberwocky.
Yes.
Why Jabberwocky?
There are multiple Gilliam films still in need of release. This is definitely one of them. But this is, again, it's freaking hilarious. And if they really did their job right, really brought their A game, and collected, I mean, look at that. There's a lot of bonus
There's a
features on
billion
there.
special features
If
out
they
there.
could collect as much as possible of the bonus features and then commission a few new interviews, a new, some of that stuff. Like, I would like to see, I know Jones unfortunately is suffering from dementia. Graham Chapman has long since passed, unfortunately. But Terry Gilliam, Eric Idle, John Cleese, Michael Palin are all still around, If I think Palin was involved with this one.
I mean, Cleese and Gilliam are still working.
Well, all of them, really. I mean, Idle not as much, but he's like doing the comedy circuit and whatnot. But yeah, I would love to see them sit down and just do a combination commentary and reminiscence about everything. I think that would be great. Or it could even be, again, like I was talking about with the others, they could be in character, doing a MST3K sort of in character as
That
various...
would be great.
be great. Yes. But I would love to see them tackle Monty Python again. They could either do this by itself or in a package with Life of Brian and Meaning of Life, but they really need to put out some Monty Python.
I'm going to start this with a shout out to a YouTube channel called Defunctland. That's Defunctland. If I am not lazy and not in a rush to get this edited, I'll have like a little title card up there. But if not, try and remember it. They do some really cool documentaries, and they have been doing a kind of stage by stage Jim Henson documentary series. It is really, really good. One of the things that there's two things that people really think of when they think of Jim Henson. One is Sesame Street. But there was also his earlier projects and earlier creations, The Muppets, which, oddly enough, I did not realize was a British production for the most part. They filmed almost everything in London. But they filmed most of Sesame Street in New York, so they would be back and forth between... They'd be flying back and forth to film. So, one of the things that kind of culminates this is the first release, and the most successful, by the way, of their films. I'm not sure, maybe the newest one, not the newest one, but the other Muppet Movie Revival one may have done better. But I know this one was the best one to date up until then. And that is The Muppet Movie. Of course, one of the things it's most famous for is the song The Rainbow Connection, which... most people know that song. It's a really good song. It's been sung over and over again. It's been covered. And this one is sort of an origin story about the Muppets and how they met each other and how they got famous. And I believe there's an Orson... No, I don't think the Orson Welles one is actually in Muppets Take Manhattan.
This isn't the one that has Happiness Hotel, is it?
No, this is the one that... No, that's Great Muppet Caper.
Okay.
This one does have, one of Orson Welles' last roles is to give the Muppets the standard rich and famous contract at the end. I love the Muppets because they're funny. They were one of Jim Henson's attempts to actually not just make the puppeteering popular for children, but to allow them to break through so that adults could enjoy them as well. Another thing that's fun about them is that routinely they are always broke. They represent most of us in America today, because most of us are paycheck to paycheck, living broke.
C.
Yes. So, to me, they're some of the more relatable ones, because all these other people, I mean, Clark Griswold, they're in an upper middle class family, upset because they can't afford a pool.
Yeah. Well, they can't afford a pool because of how much they spend on electricity during Christmas.
Yeah. So, but these are the things. These people are all upper middle class families. Most of us aren't upper middle class. No. Most of us aren't even middle class. I think I'm middle class, but that's still barely touching that.
No.
So, again, great things, great film. If there isn't a collection, this should definitely be a Criterion release. I mean, they've got some decent special features. Unfortunately, the mouse owns it, so again, you run into the same type of stumbling blocks.
Yeah.
They didn't own it at the time, but matter of fact, Columbia owned it at the time that this came out. They have some cool things like camera tests and some funny special features, but they could come up with a lot of special features for this. I would love to see them actually release that full documentary that Defunctland does. I mean, remember the name. Visit his site. Check out that documentary if you like anything remotely Jim Henson.
Okay. Well, speaking of stuff that has some YouTube connections, my next choice is one that we have covered on Inside Movies Galore. And we will once again revisit, dip our toe into the water, if you will, of the Steven Spielberg collection for his famed movie Jaws.
You know they did a laser disc of this one. I'm sure they did.
I'm sure they did, but I've never heard of it. In fact, I'm pretty sure I did look up Jaws and found that they had not done it.
A lot of Pinterest ones that they did.
Jaws is one of those ones that's like, how in the flippin' hell is this not in the collection? It was the original summer blockbuster. It's also one of the most famed and acclaimed creature features ever made. And then it's there's just so much there. And this one actually does have some bonus features. That could be a good skeleton on which to build a Criterion collection.
Yes.
But you could definitely do a full-blown 2 or 3 disc treatment for this, and people would love it. And it would be really, really good. There's so much trivia. There's so much behind the scenes. I would love to see like an original interview with Steven Spielberg.
Yeah.
Maybe an original interview with the surviving cast members like Richard Dreyfuss and, well, who else is still alive?
People.
Not that many. But also, of course, your older, any existing older stuff that could work. Like this has a making of Jaws, which features interviews with Spielberg, Dreyfuss, and Roy Scheider. I think I actually watched most of these bonus features. There were some good ones on. I have a slightly better edition in terms of the bonus features, and but this is just a great film, and it's a classic, and there's just so much they could do with it.
We lock one cat up, another one comes to interrupt.
Hey, Foo, how's it going?
Come here. Come here, kitty. No, okay. He's just gonna stay off camera for a moment. That's right.
How's it
Keep
going?
him off of the camera. Well, he can be on camera, but he can't be destroying the camera, like you know. In any case, let's talk about somebody that I talked about in the previous list, Don Bluth, who really should have a Criterion release of some sort. He is known for films like American Tail, what was it, Dogs
All Dogs Go to
Heaven,
Land Before Time.
Yeah, lots of these classics, but there's one that I had in my honorable mentions last time that I'm bringing back, and that is The Secret of Nim. This was a favorite of mine, and the subject matter was perfect for Bluth's darker, yet slightly family-friendly content. This has had multiple releases, and I do believe a Blu-ray release, but kind of poor, bare-bones releases. And so we could use a good, beefed-up release for this movie. It's really good. It has a sequel, which is not worth watching. So we can just pretend that doesn't exist. We need this to be released. The soundtrack is amazing. Unfortunately, a lot of the cast are not with us anymore. I think Don Bluth has passed, and Dom DeLuise has passed, and who else in here? Yeah, it's just kind of sad that she's no longer, that he's no longer with us. But maybe we can still get some people who are still associated with this film, who are still alive, back to talk about the film. So, again, it's a lovely film. I would love to see a good full transfer, all these things on it. It needs to come to Criterion.
Okay.
Moving on.
Yeah, I actually am not particularly familiar with that one, but I do agree that the Bluth films, not this one, but the other three that we mentioned, All Dogs Go to Heaven was one of the first movies I ever saw in theaters. Land Before Time, actually, I saw it also in theaters.
Which also spawned a million sequels.
A million, yes. And I don't think I saw American Tail in theaters, but I grew up with the film. I loved the film. Somewhere out there was always a favorite song. So definitely, this is, you're right, a guy that needs the treatment.
Yes.
Now, some other folks who could use more love from Criterion. On our previous video, I put forward 2 of their movies. They currently have 2. I'm talking, of course, the brothers Coen have 2 only out. Inside Llewyn Davis and Blood Simple. And in both cases, Criterion failed. They put out Inside Llewyn Davis too soon.
Yeah, way too soon.
And they put out Blood Simple without the audio commentary track by the fake British historian. I have the collector's edition that has that commentary track. It's hilarious. And I think, if I'm reading this correctly, that they have the same guy. Exclusive introduction featuring Mortimer Young, a practitioner of non-uptight film preservation. His restoration of the famous toe scene, presented here, will blow your mind. I'm speaking, of course, of their film, The Big Lebowski. And he has hardly any bonus features on this edition, but that bonus feature I don't have on my edition, and I want to watch it. I want to find out if it's the same guy. But this is a film that has spawned more releases than any other Coen Brothers film. It truly is a cult classic film. Probably one of their most beloved films, along with O Brother Art Thou. But for very different reasons and for a somewhat different audience. I love this film. I think it's wonderful. It really is. It's a stoner caper comedy about a rug that really tied the room together. That's really about it. And it features Jeff Bridges as Jeffrey the Dude Lebowski and John Goodman as Walter Sobchak, and those are respectively 2 of their very best roles. They should have been Oscar nominated for those roles. And it is just such a wonderful... Talking about a film with a phenomenal soundtrack, once
Yes.
again. I actually own the official soundtrack release, and it was missing several high-profile songs from the soundtrack. So maybe some sort of a featurette about the soundtrack. Thibaut Burnett, the rock producer, who I believe is Mr. Shania Twain, if I remember correctly, went on to work with the Coens in Oh Brother Art Thou and most of their subsequent films. This was, I think, the first time they teamed up. And they put together a really eclectic soundtrack, but it was really great. From the opening credits of The Man and Me by Bob Dylan all the way through to Dead Flowers by Townes Van Zandt? One of the Van Zandts. Just great soundtrack. Great film. Really, really, really deserves the Criterion treatment. The Coen brothers are notoriously tight-lipped about their own stuff, which is somewhat unfortunate. But if they could at least get Bridges and Goodman on board, maybe Sam Elliott, Julianne Moore, some of the people involved. Unfortunately, Philip Seymour Hoffman's no longer with us, but you could definitely get some good involvement here. And this might be another great one where in-character audio commentary, like if you get the dude, Walter and Donnie sitting there watching the film, and every few minutes you get Donnie trying to speak up and Walter saying, "Shut the It'd be kind of fun.
So, this list has been a lot lighter on anime than our previous list.
Yes.
But I do have one. I don't think... You don't have any, I don't think.
I do not, but I do have an Asian film next.
So, this is one that's kind of unusual. Most people probably have not heard of, and this is the reason why I thought this is a film that needs to be shown. And that is Spring and Chaos, directed by Shoji Kawamori, who also wrote it. And this is actually a tribute to the life of the poet Kinji Miyazawa. And they depict them as cats, which is funny because from what I have heard, the poet in question hated cats. But it is a beautiful set. Beautiful out-of-print set. But it was Tokyo Pop. That's, part of that. Now, as you can see, it just slips back in here. This is extremely artistic. It experiments with different types of animation, a lot of cool film design, and of course, poetry in and of itself. It is a beautiful story and art piece that comes together to form something greater. It is Tokyo Pop, which does not have a notorious record for keeping their stuff. They're not Aniplex. But, of course, this license may have long expired.
Probably.
So, again, not a long one. 57 minutes. It actually has some decent special features. When it comes to anime, that's pretty impressive when you've got some interviews on there. So, this one, I feel, should get a release.
So my next one is a film that also could be seen as poetic. In fact, I think it's one of the most gorgeous films I've ever seen, and not just because it stars Ziyi Zhang, but it's a film that's it has a mixed following. Some people hate it, some people love it. I love it. This film is probably my highest rated non-English film, with the possible exception of maybe Grave of the Fireflies, maybe Pan's Labyrinth. This one is an Ang Lee classic, and Ang Lee is beloved of Criterion. They have done several of his films already. It shocks me they have not tackled this.
Oh, the Hulk?
Yes. Well, and last time you saw that I presented his Father Knows Best trilogy.
And I made that same joke.
But this time I am presenting Woho Kanglong, which is also called Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. And I know, again, the people who watched this for the martial arts were severely disappointed because it was more of a dance than actual martial arts. And a lot of people don't like how slow and meditative Lee is. I don't mind it. I think this is between the cinematography, the gorgeous Zhejiang, the wonderful set design, the music with Yo-Yo Ma doing his cello, and he is probably the best cellist alive. It's just a gorgeous film. It's a piece of art, really. And it's a fairy tale as well. It's basically a fairy tale for adults. It really is. And this was one I did get to see in theaters, but unfortunately I showed up 5 or 6 minutes after it started. So it was a while before I got to see the whole thing. I've probably seen it 3 or 4 times. Probably no more than that. But it baffles me that this does not have a Criterion release. And this edition that he has does have a decent number of special features, but they're mostly fairly basic.
Yeah.
So I would at least like to see some of these. There's a featurette with Michelle Yeoh and a making of special. There's a commentary by Ang Lee and James Seamus, his co-writer on the film. So maybe those and then some more in-depth stuff. I would really love to hear, like, an in-depth production about the, what is that style where they use the wires and everything? What do they call that again?
Fake?
There's an actual term for it. There's an actual term. So it's something like that. Yes. But anyway, this really should get a Criterion release post-haste.
I actually liked House of Flying Daggers better.
I like that one too. And that probably should get a Criterion one day.
So, the late, great Wes Craven did a lot of cool stuff. We're going to be talking about one of the Wes Craven films at the later bit of the month on Inside Movies Galore when we cover A Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yep.
But there was a 4-film series that not only redefined the slasher genre, but poked fun at itself at the same time. And that was Scream. Now, this is a Canadian release. The 4-film release in the United States is the first 3 movies plus a documentary. This is all 4 films, but no documentary or special features. We need some really good special features. We want that documentary, but we want all 4 films. I look at this, I think that the first one could be released on its own for Criterion. But I really think that if you're going to do it right, you do the 4 and have like a few documentaries, like that one that's on the 4-film collection. And just, I know there's a number of special features. Really fun. Scream is essentially kind of a parody in a way of the slasher genre, but became an excellent slasher series in and of itself. Hard to believe that something that started out like that became the phenomenon that it did.
Yeah.
Ghostface be praised.
Don't just hear you say that. I love the Scream series. I really do. I'm not a big slasher person, but I love that series. It is unfortunate that Mr. Craven's no longer with us to give us a new commentary, but you've got most of the cast members are still around. You can definitely get some good info there. So speaking of slashers, well, actually, let's take a break and do some honorable mentions.
Yep, brief mentions.
Brief mentions. This one already has lots of great special editions, and I'm pretty sure I'm showing you an awesome special edition. But again, as slashers go, John Carpenter's Halloween really, really should be in the collection. It really, yeah. I don't care about the rest of the series, but I would love to have a Criterion edition of this film.
Hey, the newest movie was pretty darn
The
good.
newest movie was really good too, but yeah. Which you could almost package them as a twofer, because wasn't it supposed to be a direct sequel to the...
Yeah, technically it's supposed to be the second film.
Yeah. All right, and then your twofer...
Actually, no, I think it was the third film. I can't remember whether they considered the second one or not. Oh, well, it doesn't matter. Mine is a 2-movie collection. Again, not Nana, which is kind of sad because they recast one of the Nanas for the second one. But it is a really good series. The anime and the manga are also good. It's about one girl who's kind of a preppy girl named Nana, who's trying to make it on her own in the city, and another girl who got through a big breakup, also named Nana, who's a punk rocker, who's also trying to make it on her own in the city. They hook up in a friend way.
They become roommates.
Yeah, and unlikely friends. And the story about their friendship, actually, along with the excellent soundtrack.
Excellent soundtrack, yeah.
Including in the live action, to me, is worthy of a Criterion.
Yeah. I concur.
Now, on to the stars of the show.
On to the stars. And my last set. And if you watched our other videos this week, you will see that we made mention of Mr. Christopher Nolan.
Shoot, we made it earlier. Actually, yeah. Oh, never mind. I didn't put the following up.
Yes. Following his first film is, I think, his only Criterion release to date. And following is far and away his most tedious film. I don't recall if Memento's gotten a release yet from Criterion, but sure should.
It's not tedious enough.
No, it's not. But the one I'm going with is one that I want to see for multiple reasons. I want to see this from Criterion, and that is the Dark Knight trilogy. Batman Begins came out and not only breathed new life into a franchise that Joel Schumacher and Warner Brothers had killed dead, but it also was a fairly revolutionary superhero film. It was really freaking good. And Nolan, obviously, he was an auteur, art house director. It was clearly his first time playing in the big pool, but he still did a really, really good job. He had a well-cast Batman, a very well-cast Scarecrow, just really well done. Then The Dark Knight came along and blew it out of the water. The Dark Knight is probably the best superhero film ever made. It's great. And I know we differ a little bit on how faithful to the comics the Joker was, but as a villain, this version is probably the best movie villain.
Definitely an iconic portrayal.
An iconic portrayal. And Aaron Eckhart, begin and end my list with Aaron Eckhart. He did a great job as Harvey Dent / Two-Face. Yeah. The film did everything pretty much right, except for, some leeway from the comics. But definitely went for that dark and gritty feel. And unfortunately, ever since then, everyone else has gone for that.
Yeah. And we're kind of going to see another take on the Joker soon enough. There was that
very different take.
Comicbook.com actually came out with a report saying basically fans of the comic are going to hate this film. I'm like, okay, that makes me feel real good.
Well, let's look at it this way. The way I see it is the Joker is an iconic role. Yeah. Batman to a degree. But the Joker is the kind of character that survives multiple interpretations. I mean, for crying out loud, DC Comics has it in canon right now that there are 3 Jokers. It's in canon that there are 3 Jokers. So the idea of each Joker being a little different, I'm fine with that. If they're done well. One of the reasons I love Heath Ledger's portrayal of the Joker, and I've said this before, I love Jack Nicholson's performance. He was very good as the Joker that we would have expected, But I always felt that he gave about 50% commitment to the role. He was like, okay, I can play crazy. I can have fun. I can be wild and crazy and, And he basically played Jack Nicholson with no restrictions. You know what I mean? Heath Ledger was 110% committed to this role. He was unrecognizable as Heath Ledger. And that's why I give him so much props. And I believe Joaquin Phoenix is likely to do the same thing.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, Jared Leto almost did the same thing, and he just went in the wrong direction.
Going all out doesn't necessarily mean that it's
Leto,
going to...
Leto went all out in the wrong direction.
Well,
We'll see. And then, of course, you have the third one, The Dark Knight Rises, which introduced Bane and tried mightily, and did a decent job, of healing the damage done by the execrable Bane performance of the previous film.
Well, that's hard to not top.
Tom Hardy did an excellent job with the role. It was not quite the Bane that I know from the comics, but it was a good Bane. It was a very good Bane. Joseph Gordon-Levitt was an excellent addition to the cast. I absolutely love Marion Cotillard and the big reveal about who she really was. I really enjoyed that. At this point, it's not that big a spoiler to say that she was a red herring. It ultimately did not impress me as much, but how could he have hit the same mark twice in a row? I don't know. Dark Knight Rises is at least as good as Batman Begins. But as a starting point for Criterion to really go all out with Nolan's popular films, I think that's a phenomenal start. I think ultimately most of his films should get the Criterion treatment. But this one definitely, I could see them doing a big, nice collection. Like, probably a whole second or fourth disc just for bonus features. You could get a lot of fun stuff. Unfortunately, because Mr. Ledger has passed, he cannot give us any new, But most of the other people, Christian Bale, Tom Hardy, Chris Nolan himself, there's Cillian Murphy, there's a lot of people who could give us some really good insight on the films, and I'd love to hear it. Yeah.
Last one. This one is another one that my father introduced me to as a child. A lot of interesting things in my childhood. I was only 6 or 7 when I was introduced to the previous one, which was a good film, so it's not a big deal. This one I was also introduced to at a young age, a little bit older, I think closer to 10. And that is Mickey Rourke's film, Barfly. It stars Mickey Rourke and Faye Dunaway. Big names that many people know, and a very interesting portrayal of a poet and novelist, and one story that he had not told before about his life, the time when he was a barfly, and when he met the love of his life. This is a nihilistic portrait of humanity, done in the most negative way that we can think of, yet entertaining way. With this is one of the things that people think of at a time, or at least it's mentioned when we talk about art and Mickey Rourke, and had come up several times when The Wrestler had come out not too long ago. I do think that this film has been mostly forgotten. This is a heavily out-of-print release. And even the release that many people got to watch of the film for our Inside Movies Galore, check it out.
Yes.
Was a release that was not an American release.
This discussion, incidentally, featured a variety of opinions.
Which is good, because this film has a lot of controversy to it. This has a decent number of special features, including a commentary, and by the director, who threatened to cut off his finger to get this film made. And
That's some dedication.
and even like video work with the man himself, who, by the way, hates the medium of movies. So it's really kind of cool. You get to see Mickey Rourke's portrayal, and you get to see the man himself. And you can see how close they actually were. He actually got a lot of the mannerisms down. It was really neat. I would love to see more features of this guy, see a little bit more of that. I'm sure there's a lot more tape or B-roll that they had.
Well, by the numbering, there were a lot more tapes.
Yes.
They had how many in the movie? 5?
Yeah.
Something like that?
So
I think I watched 3 of them.
So
Yeah.
I think that this is one of those things that you could easily get a number of extra special features out of, and would definitely be an interesting take. And Barfly is something that Criterion would indeed release.
Yes.
You can't disagree with that. They would release Barfly.
Actually, you could almost see them doing that in Lost Weekend as a set.
That'd be interesting.
It would be.
Alcoholic set.
Exactly.
Recovery and not recovery.
Yes.
Or adventure and nihilism.
Oh, yeah, jeez.
Get that Darren Aronofsky movie in there too, and just have like a triple feature right there.
Well, all right. I mean, well, if you're talking Aronofsky, I could almost see them pairing it with The Wrestler. And The Wrestler is another Aronofsky one that could use a... Yeah, definitely.
So with that being said, I think we've come up with some interesting ones.
Yeah.
But we have definitely run on.
And Criterion, you got one of ours last time. Let's shoot for 5 this time. Does that sound good?
5 different releases of Barfly.
And of course, any of our viewers, if you've got any that we missed or that you, well, of course, any that you strongly agree with, let us know. But also any of them that you missed, that we missed, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Yeah.
Most definitely. So, of course, like, subscribe, and share. And we will see you on the next one.
Goodbye.